Well, thank the Lord it is finally Friday, because I'll tell you what, man, I didn't think this week was going to end.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. It seems like this cold blast has made everybody feel like, time has kind of stopped. But it's Friday. Things are looking up. Temperatures are looking up. So
That is the truth. And that the cold, I mean, it is far from being just cold. It is frigid. It's a polar vortex out there. Like this morning in my truck, it was -18 when I got in it to go to work.
Jeez.
And I'm like, geez, I'm done with this, man. I'm done with it. And, a lot of people are out there with jobs that they have outside, and they're like, all these office job people are bitching and complaining. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. That sucks that you have to work outside, but it is cold out. And
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, one thing that puts it in perspective for me is like I usually keep my heat in the house like 68 or 70 degrees. And, just I always think about the temperature -30, because when you're going from 70 Fahrenheit to -30, as soon as you open the door, that's an instant 100-degree difference. I mean, that's just like a slap in the face.
It really is. And, with these colder temps, it does have an effect on whitetails. And, a lot of people, they don't know that a whitetail can be out in this cold actually and survive. And it's because of their hair and their fur, how it's hollow and everything. And a lot more things go into it with their body mass and how much they store away every season for the cold,
Yep.
And that'll be something else we get into. But today, it kind of goes hand in hand. We are coming up, fastly approaching on shed season. And, we had kind of hinted to it, earlier this week in the podcast about doing shed hunting. I think it'd be cool to dive into, just shed hunting. And, a lot of people don't even realize that deer and elk and mule deer, stuff like that, they shed their antlers every year. For the people that do know that, a lot of them don't know how they shed their antlers. So I thought it'd be cool to go through this and go through the process, and then maybe we'll round it out with some shed hunting practices, what you can do, where to look, and
Yep.
and all sorts of stuff like that. I thought that'd be cool conversation.
Yeah, for sure. It's just like you said, people that don't know, you see these pictures, these video clips of bucks that are just locked up, or elk, or even moose. They're fighting to the death, and they can take such a beating, and they don't fall off then. And then 2 months later, the storm kind of passes, and all of a sudden they're dropping off just, from the impact of jumping a fence, or, got their head down, and, their antler might be touching the ground or hitting a corn stalk or whatever. It doesn't take much to knock them off once the time has come to actually cast the antler. I think one important thing to state, in the beginning of all this is, there's a difference between antler and horn.
Yes.
And we're talking about animals that grow antler, not horn here, because horns grow for life, from birth. That animal's horn is growing nonstop. And it does shed, but it sheds the casing, like the outside. It grows from the inside out and pushes kind of that shell off. Animals with your horns are going to be sheep and goat species, antelope, bighorn sheep, mountain goats. All those animals have true horns, where whitetails have antlers. And the largest mammal that grows and casts an antler is a moose. So from deer, whitetail deer to mule deer, all the whitetail subspecies, coos deer, like I said, mule deer, elk, man, what else? I just can't rattle them off quick enough, but...
yeah, a mule deer, elk, blacktails, coos deer,
Yep.
All sorts like that. The what they call ungulates.
Ungulate.
I'm probably saying that wrong.
Yeah.
Ungulate. There you go.
Yep.
All those animals are the same.
Yep, and that's any animal with a split hoof is how an ungulate is classified.
Even a horse, I think, is, like you said earlier, I think it's classified as an ungulate, correct? But obviously they don't have horns.
Right, yeah, but...
Or antlers.
I wouldn't... I'm with you on that one. I believe a horse is classified as an ungulate, but then I think about a caribou where, even the cows, sometimes you see grow antlers. I mean, more often than like an antlered white-tailed doe, but so yeah, that's one thing I don't want to speak too much on, because I'm not 100% on where a caribou is going to fall. I'm pretty sure their hoof is split, yep. But like I said, some of the females do grow an antler, but if you look at sheep and goats, all those females in those species grow a horn, so I don't want to cloud the water too much.
So yeah, let's just hone in on whitetails here. So, whitetails grow their antlers every year to, they are showing their dominance, and they're doing it to fight. You know what I mean? To show that superiorness, or that the pecking order, basically. And that's when the rut comes, and all these deer are fighting, and they're staking claim to different areas and everything. And that causes a high testosterone level. I mean, rut crazed bucks, and their testosterone is as high as it can be. And they're out, and that's when you see the knockdown drag out fights.
Yep.
Now once the rut is over, the testosterone levels, they fall, and that causes weakness of the pedicle, which the pedicle is where the antler connects to the head, or the skull plate. The pedicle becomes so weak that the antler growth stops, and after that, antlers just simply fall off, around this time, because their stress levels, some deer are more stressed than others, and they could be wounded, and that would cause deer to shed a little earlier than normal. That testosterone level, when it falls and weakens that pedicle, they just know that they're not getting any more blood flow, they're not growing anymore, so that's when it causes them to fall off. I mean, do you have anything else to add on that?
Yeah, you're 100% right. Those antlers are their weapons. Their only purpose in growing those is to get ready to fight it out with other males for breeding rights of the females. And that's as hunters, what everyone is looking at as, I don't want to say the word trophy, but I mean, if you're raising, mature deer, honestly, when it comes down to it, that's part of the trophy. That's what you're after. But, outside of the hunt aspect of it, the rise in testosterone is triggered by the photo period, or the length of the day. And that's all timed with, moon phase and how far away the earth is from the sun, as we all know. But, with that, once the rut is over and the breeding and the fighting is done, that daylight gets longer again after the winter solstice, and you have those testosterone levels decreasing, on the downswing, in that natural cycle. So with the testosterone levels dropping, the pedicles begin to weaken because they don't need those antlers anymore. And from this point on, they're focused on nutrition. They go into the rut in the best possible physical condition they're going to be in all year, and they come out of the rut in the worst physical condition they're going to be in all year.
Yes.
So, which leads me to the other factor in when those antlers are going to be cast, which is, nutrition and injury. If the buck has sustained any kind of injury throughout the breeding season, or, during a fight, that's just going to weaken his body, his mentality, and, his ability to maintain a role in that pecking order. If he got his butt whooped, he's going to be, kind of walking around with his tail tucked between his legs. He knows there's somebody else out there bigger and better, and he's just waiting for seconds or thirds. So the two big factors are testosterone and daylight, the length of the day, but then your nutrition and injury are also, playing a role in the whole picture here.
Yeah, and something I left out there before, I kicked it to you, and I should have mentioned was, the drop in the testosterone levels, that happens right after the rut. So I did say that. But the drop in the hormone level activates a special cell called osteoclasts. And these cells eat away at the pedicle, and that is basically why the deer sheds its antlers, because this osteoclast cell, it makes the pedicle weak. Then that's when their deer, they ultimately shed. This process does not hurt the deer at all.
No.
You know what I mean? So
No.
they don't even, they feel it. They might knock one side off, and then the other side might feel a little heavy. But usually, a lot of times when they knock one side off, they kick and they move their head around a lot, and usually that other side will fall off relatively in the same area. But some bucks, it doesn't happen like that. But I wanted to mention that, that cell, that osteoclast cell, that's what weakens the pedicle.
Correct.
Now, some contributing factors to that, some deer shed their antlers early or later than normal, depending on different factors. Wounded and injured deer usually cast their antlers earlier than normal because of injuries that activate the osteoclast cells early. So the same situation goes for deer with declining physical conditions.
Right.
Deer that are in good condition and that they might live in, like, not such a harsh climate, maybe like in the south or something, or in Texas instead of like here in Michigan or the north. They have a high quality of habitat, and they might have food longer, and better food maybe. So when deer, shed their antlers earlier based on whatever contributing factor that could be, that's when your late season hunts could be, you could have a buck come in and it's already shed and you're still hunting, or one side's gone, or, that's probably one of the contributing factors is those cells have weakened the pedicle and maybe that deer's injured. Like I have a buck right now in Michigan here, I think he shed right around December 1st, somewhere right in there. But I do know he's been shot. He was shot with a gun, and he's still living. And he came in on trail cam, and both of his antlers are gone. So that deer's under a high stress level right now, and those osteoclast cells have weakened that pedicle, and that's why he's already shed. But I still do have bucks that are holding.
Yeah, it's not really surprising. It's just that injury contributed to his physical condition, which led to those osteoclasts being activated sooner than, the daylight would have triggered the testosterone to trigger.
Yeah. And I've had instances when I've been out turkey hunting in April and I've had a buck come by me and he's still got antlers, and I've always was like wondering why that was. And, some research that I've done is, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but research that I've come up with on that is that deer possibly didn't live under a high stressful environment and probably had the best nutrients as he could get. I did a little research on it, and that's kind of what I come up with is, deer under high stress, whether that be a harsh winter and lack of habitat, or maybe they were wounded or injured from a fight from a weapon, and maybe he's got the best nutrients out there, so his antlers are still holding longer. I don't know. That's about the best thing I could come up with when that research took place, and I was looking for those answers.
Yeah. What time of the spring was that? Like April or May or March?
That was mid-April.
Mid-April.
It was mid-April. Our turkey season had just came in. Yep.
Yeah, it's possible he's still holding, but it's also possible you were looking at antlered doe. There's 3 different variations of hermaphroditic deer, and you can see antlered does. You could see antlered does in hard antler or in full velvet at any given point, depending on which of the 3 variations they might be. So that's something to consider too.
Yeah, so that basically wraps up why deer shed and how they shed. So, for the next, 5 to 7 or 10 minutes, I want to talk about now it's shed season. And this is some of the areas in the farm where you can go and look and maybe find sheds, maybe things you shouldn't be doing right now, which right now we're in the middle of the winter. Here in Michigan, there's 2 to 2.5 foot of snow out here, and the deer just really don't need to be stressed out right now. And one of my biggest things is you're not going to find a lot of sheds around. You might find a couple, in a bean field or something, or a cut corn field. And right now, if I go pushing into my farm to look for sheds, I might push deer off of my farm onto the neighbors where they might drop the sheds over there, or, it might just stress them out a little bit more. So I'm going to wait. I'd like to have the snow melting a little bit and a little warmer day. You can get the family out there, it's a social event, and that's what I look forward to, once it warms up here, in the next couple months.
Yeah, that is, what everybody's looking forward to right now, because number one, you're going to see, which of your deer survived up to the day that they cast the antler, but, it's just another part of the hunt that, gets you through, or kind of gives you the inventory you're looking for going into the spring and your food plot planning and all that stuff. But, and with that being said, there's a lot of things you can do to go out there and give yourself a better chance at finding those sheds to the deer that you hope are still alive. And obviously the first one you're going to want to look for, we all understand the importance of a food source at the end of the hunting season, and it's because the deer are so cold, they got to keep their metabolic rates up, but they're also putting on, the fat reserves, and they're trying to get back in better shape after the rut. So target food sources, looking for sheds, because that's where all the deer are going to be yarded up, in the late winter when the antlers are actually dropping. So look at food sources. Second thing, especially like maybe with you up in Michigan or anybody, in kind of the higher elevations, focus on on south-facing hillsides. With the sun
Yep.
moving from east to west, that means the shadow is constantly on the north side, of a tree, or a mountain for that matter, and therefore, with the shadow on the north, that means the sun is on the south. So focus on those south-facing slopes or southerly aspects. That's going to have potentially shallower snow and just a warmer place for the deer to be bedded down in and to be holed up for the winter.
Right.
And those are things to take into consideration when you're planning those food plots. Before you even think about looking for a shed, ask yourself, the deer are going to go to this place in the winter for these reasons. I'm going to put some extra food over here, knowing I'm probably going to find the majority of my sheds over there. Just kind of
Right.
put some of those other things in your favor. That's some stuff I've had luck with and that I've seen in the past.
Yep.
Another good one is fence rows, where the deer are going to have to jump over the fence. Like I said earlier, that impact of them stopping, when they come back down can kind of just be enough of a nudge to let that antler fall off if it's already, just waiting for a reason. Found a lot
Right
there on fence lines.
Yep, and I agree. Find where the most concentrated area of deer are, and the good thing is with the snow right now, you can see where all their tracks are and in the food sources and where they're going. A lot of deer, they're not going far from food right now, but they are going to thermal cover. So up here in the north, we have a lot of pine groves and pine flats and stuff like that. So that's good thermal cover, or cedar or hemlock swamps.
Yep.
That gets them out of the wind and out of the cold. So I first like to go to food. If, look for the food, it's the easy walk, and usually it's a field, and, you can do a couple passes in the field. And then I go to the thermal cover. On my family farm, we've got a lot of pines on there, and they're close to, the food. So next I go to thermal cover and where they're bedding, and really going up and down there and trying to find, like I said, where most of the traffic is with the deer. Now, after that, I start going to the miscellaneous things like you had just said, the fence rows and, the crossings, the ditches, the ditch crossings, or a creek crossing, or highly trafficked runways, that you've known about for years on a property. And that's where I really start, and then I go to.
Yeah.
And, kind of knock off the low-hanging fruit, and then go for a long walk and head for the fence rows and the creek crossings. And don't overlook CRP fields. CRP fields like out in Kansas, tons of them out there.
Yeah.
We found some sheds this year in season, and they were a match set, and they were close to 2 points of timber that came into the CRP. So if you can visualize a point of timber coming up into the CRP, and then, maybe 100 yards across there is another point of timber. So they're going to, the closest point to point. It's a transition zone, and they were right in line with there. He lost one, and you could tell it was like 60 yards later. He didn't like the other one on there, probably shaking his head around, and that one fell off as well. So
Yep.
Look at the points of timber, close contact from thermal cover to thermal cover. That's another good one. And just walk your farm and get to know it. And there's probably a lot of areas on your farm that you don't like to go ever, or in the fall, this is the time to go in there. And well, not right now, but when it does come time, like I said, I just don't like going on the farm knowing I'm going to bust deer out of there where they could be going to someone else's farm and or putting more stress, unwanted stress on them that you really don't need to.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Like, I mean, myself, like I'm anxious to get out and do a little coyote hunting right now, and I've got access to a lot of private ground, but some guys are saying, stay off of this part, don't go there. Talk to me in March, and it's because they don't want deer to leave the property before they shed. They want to know those antlers are going to stay on their farm, and they look at pressure right now the same way that we do, in October when we're trying to find a buck. It's just as important to keep that pressure off the farm right now, or out of the areas that you suspect deer to be holding in, if you want to find their sheds.
Most definitely. And it just builds the story too. Once you find those sheds of the buck you've been chasing, and and a lot of times they'll shed where they bed or where they live or their home area. So that kind of puts another piece of the pie to the story of where you might hone in on this deer and where he's at, and where you can have a chance at him in the fall.
Yeah, definitely. And we kind of covered a lot, and I hope it's not too confusing here, but if shed hunting is part of your arsenal as far as inventory, and getting your hands on those antlers is what you look for this time of the year. If you're targeting shed hunting, take this stuff into consideration this year and, in the future. Like I said, plan your plots accordingly, and stuff like that goes well beyond the killing stage of the animal. So there's a lot you can do to try to make sure you're recovering the antlers of the deer that do make it through the season.
For sure. The season never ends, man. Even though it's in the winter, we always want to be out there doing something. We're getting a little cabin fever before turkey season, so shed hunting's a good time to get the family out there and do some walking, get out of the house and get some walking in. So we're going to wrap this one up, and everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week. If any of you guys are in the market for new cables and strings, look no further than America's Best Bowstrings. And if you want more information on them, go to americasbestbowstrings.com and tell them the guys from the Fall Podcast sent you.